This morning we're going to talk about the BSc in Pharmaceutical Biotechnology. And my name is Lorraine Martin and I am a professor in biomolecular sciences, a biochemist by training, working in the School of Pharmacy for over 20 years and programme director of the BSc in Pharmaceutical Biotechnology. And as you can see, all the university buildings are within very, very close walking distance. And down in the bottom left-hand corner of the map, you'll see Elms Village. And this is our student accommodation where most of our first years would live before maybe moving out into private rented accommodation in second and third year. Now, the Lanyon building is marked there, so you can see just a short walk from the Lanyon building down any of those parallel streets, you get to the top right-hand or left-hand corner, which is our Health and Life Sciences campus. Now, one of the great things about this campus is all the buildings are very adjacent to each other, and we're also beside the Belfast City Hospital, which is great as well in terms of our clinical interface for many of our research projects. So the gateway to the campus is that building on the left, which is top left, which is called the Medical Biology Centre. So for many of you who maybe will come in terms of school visits, this will be your first entry point into our Health and Life Sciences campus. And many of our large lecture theatres and teaching rooms and our big teaching lab would be on the ground floor of this building. We also have cafes and other social areas in this building. As you walk through this building and out the back, then the picture below is called the Whitlam Medical Building. We have some teaching rooms in there, and my lab is actually on the top floor of that building. If you go to the right-hand blue picture just beside, that is our Macleay Research Centre, and that is one of our two pharmacy buildings. That building would be where a lot of our research labs would be within the pharmaceutical sciences, and then the building adjacent would have our lecture theatre and a lot of our other teaching labs. And then down below, just out the back of the campus, we have the Cancer Centre and the Wilkin Wolfson Institute for Experimental Medicine. And this is great in terms of research because it brings together a lot of similar disciplines who are all working hard to do research within the biomolecular sciences, and also brings together a lot of the core facilities. So a lot of our research students would walk between these different buildings, accessing different labs and different core facilities as well. So, as I say, this picture is the Macleay Research Centre, and this would be where the reception of the school is also on the ground floor. So we'll talk a wee bit more about the School of Pharmacy now. So again, some rankings. We have been for several years #1 in the UK for pharmacy and pharmacology research. And we toggle between 1 and 2 for the top School of Pharmacy in the UK. Now we're in this ranking of pharmacology and pharmacy, so #1 tends to be taken by sometimes by a pharmacology school, not a pharmacy school. So effectively, we still like to say we're #1 School of Pharmacy in the UK. And in terms of student satisfaction, we have a 95% rating. And this is calculated by our final year students who take part in a survey called the National Student Survey. And in this survey, we ask them lots and lots of questions. It's a national survey. It's not done by Queen's. It's done throughout the UK. And they get asked lots of questions about their experience at Queen's and their experience of the degree programme. And we have a 95% satisfaction, which we're very proud of. So within the school, we have 3 different programmes. If you want to be a pharmacist, then you would need to do the MPharm. This is a 4-year degree programme that's followed by a pre-registration year that qualifies you to be a dispensing pharmacist to either go on to work as a clinical pharmacist within the hospital setting or community pharmacy, who are doing such a great job at the minute during this pandemic time. We then have 2 BScs, which are 3 years in duration, with the option of a placement year. And some of you will already have sat in on the BSc Pharmaceutical Science webinar. And as I mentioned today, we're going to focus in the next half of the presentation on pharmaceutical biotechnology. And the difference between these 2 programs is that one, the pharmaceutical science would focus more on the science of formulation and the design of sort of small molecules, whereas the pharmaceutical biotechnology is really for those who are more interested in the biology in terms of novel biotherapeutics and the use of proteins, peptides, enzymes, both for therapeutics and for diagnostics. And also a lot of the work we do is the development and the validation of therapeutic targets that the pharmaceutical science people then can go on to design small drug molecules to. And as I mentioned, both of these degree programs have the option of a placement program. Now, this slide is really up just to highlight our China Queen's College in Shenyang in China. We have collaborations and partnerships all over the world. This slide only marks those that have very formal agreements with what we call memorandums of understanding. But China Queen's Campus, or CQC, is our partner college in China, and the 2D BSc programs are run in parallel there. We have about 260 students at CQC, and we have a very close relationship. Staff travel between the two universities, and also students have the option of doing summer school in Queen's, placement opportunities, and many of them come back to do either masters or PhDs as well. One of the opportunities for BSc students at Queen's is that there's also an opportunity, it's two-way traffic, there's an opportunity to go to China to experience what it's like to study at CQC as well. Unfortunately, that hasn't now been able to happen this year, but we hope that we'll be able to re-establish that in years to come. And just before we go on to talk about the science-based programs, just again about some additional support that the university and the school offer all our students. And basically, we have a very good pastoral care and support system. Every student would be assigned a personal tutor and an advisor of studies, and then they're further supported by program leads and directors like myself, and also our directors of education, who do a great job in terms of oversight of the entire education program of the school. We also have disability officers and trained mental health first aiders, as well as a whole range of services through our wellbeing service. And there's also a range of other career development and social activities and support services offered by the Students' Union. Okay, so finally we're getting to the degree programme itself. So you're signed in because you're interested in the Pharmaceutical Biotechnology programme. So let's think about a wee bit about what biotechnology is. And I think it's really come to the forefront over these last few weeks, as we've heard so much about vaccination programs, biotherapeutics and diagnostic tests, all those things which require an understanding of biotechnology to be able to work with, to do research in, and to be able to develop. So biotechnology is definitely at the forefront of all the new and exciting advances that are currently happening within the pharmaceutical industry. And although there is still a lot of a big need for small molecule drugs and a lot of investment in small molecule drugs, there is a big move towards large molecule biologics to include protein and DNA based therapeutics. And a lot of diseases, particularly inflammatory diseases, diseases that affect the immune system, now have a range of biologics, many of them antibodies that basically target the immune system, maybe knock out a specific receptor or inflammatory molecule that would help suppress the immune system and the immune response. And there's a range of DNA-based therapies as well, particularly those targeting genetic diseases and other diseases where it would be useful to knock down a particular protein response. So as I've mentioned, a majority of the therapeutic drugs currently being developed and in the market are bioformulations and would include things like antibodies, nucleic acid products, as well as vaccines. And definitely with the coronavirus, there is huge investment, as you will well be aware, in trying to be the first to develop an effective vaccine for the global population. So this was a growing sector of the pharmaceutical industry before coronavirus, and you can imagine now how much it's further going to escalate. So why are biotherapeutics so useful? And it's really because they are natural products within our body, and they have very unique roles within our body which have advantages over small molecule drugs. They have the ability to be highly specific. You can identify a small sequence on a protein that will generate an antibody response. And if you then use that antibody as a therapeutic, you can suppress that activity. So they can serve a range of complex biological functions that really cannot be mimicked by simple chemical compounds. And what's been seen as well is with because they tend to be a more natural product, there tends to be with many of the agents then less opportunity for adverse effects or side effects as you would know them. And we're also in the era of precision and personalised medicine approaches to disease, and sometimes people get a bit confused about those terms, and we also know that stratified medicine is used as well. So basically, general medicine would be a one-size-fits-all. So everybody gets the same treatment no matter what their genetic makeup is. But really what we've understood, particularly in oncology studies, is that you can give, say, a chemotherapy drug to a number of people and they will all have different responses. And this is not just for cancer, but this is for many other diseases as well, that there will be what is called responders and also non-responders. So that makes it actually quite ineffective. So what the goal is to make medicine as effective as possible, to give the right treatment to the right patient. So to do that, we need to have an understanding of genetic makeup, of individual metabolism and things like that there. So that then goes to a more precision-based medicine where you can maybe try to treat groups of people, but ultimately the goal would be a more personalised approach where individuals are treated based on their own ability to respond to treatment. And again, that comes through genetic, molecular biology and protein-based technologies to be able to understand and adapt treatment to the individual. And you'll have heard of all these omics, proteomics, genomics, metabolomics, all of those things which we incorporate into our course. So an additional thing to make sure that people can respond well to treatment is to be able to monitor biomarkers. So a big area of work is to be able to identify and validate either the therapeutic target itself for drug development, but also biomarkers themselves to be able to monitor response to treatment. So all of the protein-based and molecular techniques that would be learned within a degree such as the BSc in Pharmaceutical Biotechnology would equip you with the skills to be able to do a number of these things. I've mentioned diagnostics, and I really want to highlight this because it is a huge and growing market. By 2021, before we had COVID, it was already going to be worth over nearly $37 billion. And these point-of-care diagnostics would include everything from glucose monitoring for diabetes, pregnancy tests, coagulation monitoring for those individuals that might need blood thinners such as warfarin, infectious disease tests, of which COVID would sit, cardiometabolic monitoring, drugs of abuse testing, and importantly, for new therapeutics coming out, companion diagnostics to, again, be able to test people's response to treatment. So this is a huge and growing market, and what many of these tests have in common is that they will have some sort of antibody incorporated into these tests or a molecular probe. So molecular biology, a knowledge of biochemistry, immunology, those things are very important for this sort of part of the biotechnology market. And SARS-CoV-2 is just an excellent example of all different ways that biotechnology can be used to try and mitigate against this devastating disease. So as I've mentioned, diagnostics is key. We need to be able to test and trace individuals that are infected with the virus. RT-PCR uses molecular probes to be able to identify and amplify up the viral RNA. And then the other tests would all, as I've mentioned, have an antibody component to them. And there's a lot of talk at the minute about serological tests to be able to identify those who already have been infected and to see if they have an antibody response. And indeed, there's some great work being done across the UK and further afield where they're using plasma of people who have been infected to see if those antibodies will actually help as a treatment. And then in terms of therapeutics, there's work being done in terms of repurposing existing antiviral drugs. My own field is in proteases and chronic airways disease, and there's a lot of protease inhibitors that are being looked at, including the HIV protease inhibitors. And I also work with companies who are looking at other protease targets. Biotherapeutics are key in terms of maybe trying to suppress this overwhelming immune response that happens to some individuals that results in them ending up in hospital. And within Queen's as well, we have a clinical trial ongoing looking at stem cell therapy to try and treat COVID as well. So lots and lots of work being done, but the ultimate goal obviously is vaccination, and that will take some time to develop. But this is all being done through research and development done both with in academia, but also importantly through very strong academic and industrial collaborations. So an understanding of how to work with industry and to work in industry is really important, and we'll come to that as part of the degree programme now. So about the course then, pharmaceutical biotechnology, therefore, as I hope you understand, is basically the science that covers a lot of the molecular and immunological and biochemistry technologies required for the production, manufacturing, registration of biological drugs, and I would also put in there tests as well, diagnostic kit tests. So students who choose our programme will be taught by leading experts in their field who will ensure that the course stays in line with ongoing advances in technology. And this is probably the most rapidly growing field within the life sciences, and we as staff are really stringent about making sure our content is the most up-to-date content that we can possibly deliver, particularly in third year, where we really get into a lot of the cutting-edge technologies that are being used to develop a lot of these novel diagnostics and therapeutics. So in terms of our course outline, level 1 is really trying to develop that foundational knowledge and the skills needed to be able to pursue the rest of the course. So in level 1, we have modules in chemistry, physiology, and pharmaceutical microbiology. And these modules would be co-taught with our MPharm and our BSc in pharmaceutical sciences. So there's great advantages to that in that the large class sizes allow great integration across the 3 degree programmes, which is very good for networking and also support within the student body. In level 2, then the focus is on formulation science, and we also do a module in biochemistry, immunology and molecular biology, and we also do a large module on medicinal chemistry as well, which would have basically focusing in on the structure of drugs and how they function. It's often called structure-activity relationships. So we look at the structure of the compound and we try to understand its biological target and why that compound makes a good drug. We go through lots of different examples of blockbuster drugs that have been really successful in treating disease. And level 3, this is where really we really focus on the biotechnology methods, technologies and different techniques that are required to go out into research, R&D and into industry to be able to facilitate and help with some of these fantastic drug development programs. So we focus on therapeutic proteins, a lot of recombinant DNA technologies. We talk about advanced drug delivery systems. We look at gene therapy, stem cell therapy, a lot of the omics that we've talked about, proteomics, genomics. We look at how to develop a vaccine. We look at how biomarkers are used. There are workshops in bioinformatics because really to be able to understand what the therapeutic targets might be, we need to first know what the sequence and structure of a protein is. And indeed, way back in January, the first bioinformatic papers were coming out on COVID, on coronavirus, which already gave a heads up as to, just from the RNA sequence as to what potential targets there might be for drug therapy. And that gave a kind of head start for researchers. Microbial biotechnology is also important and really a mainstay of a lot of the techniques to be able to manufacture and develop protein therapeutics. I talked about industry, and one of the things that we feel is very valuable to our students is to have industry relevant skills when they leave our degree course, so that they have an awareness of the things that industry partners may need their staff to have when working for them. So we do a module on quality and regulatory affairs. It's very important to know the different processes that a drug has to go through to be able to get approval. But importantly as well, we do project management as one of our skills, and we do entrepreneurship as well, because a lot of the biotechnology advances are actually made at the spin out or small, medium-sized company level. The large pharma used to do a lot of this work, but now actually prefer to let the smaller companies do it, and then they license in a lot of those technologies or patents and know-how. So a lot of the companies that are really at the cutting edge are actually very, very small and will have been recently set up. So entrepreneurship, an understanding of entrepreneurship, we feel is very important. And then importantly, we run a year-long research project as well. And that gives the students an opportunity to get into the lab, to work alongside PhD students and postdoctoral research fellows under the supervision of an academic, to be able to develop their own individual research project, which they then write up as a research paper at the end of the year. And they also, as part of that, do a very extensive critical literature review as well. I mentioned the opportunity to do a placement year, and we feel that this option gives the students an opportunity to get that industry relevant experience. The placement year sits between the second and third years of study. So this would convert the degree from a 3-year programme then into a 4-year programme, with the third year then out in industry. There are excellent opportunities across the UK and Ireland for these placements. And typically the placement would be about 48 weeks in duration, providing on-the-job training and allowing for the development of those really important industry relevant skills. And of course, then the students would be required to have passed all their modules in level 1 and level 2 before taking up their placement. Now, I've put some logos on the side there just to highlight, the entrepreneurial activity going on within Queen's. Many of these companies are spin-outs from Queen's and from the School of Pharmacy in particular. So Praxis is a company that I spun out back in 2013. And is doing well. And we develop diagnostic biomarker tests. Vion Therapeutics was spun out a couple of years ago by my colleague, Professor Helen McCarthy, and is looking at a novel drug delivery system. Ravana, again, another colleague within the School of Pharmacy, is looking at ocular drug delivery systems spun out by Dr. Raj Thakur. So there's 3 companies already spun out from the School of Pharmacy. We also have another very successful spin out from Queen's University called Fusion Antibodies, and they're doing great work in terms of developing antibody components for many of the COVID studies. CV6 and Almac are examples of spin-in, where companies have taken up a tenancy within the university. CV6 from the USA, and Almac, one of our local pharmaceutical companies down in Craigavon, have based their diagnostics arm on the Health and Life Sciences campus. And I highlight Randox as well as one of our close partners, and they have taken our summer placements, our placement students, our year-long placement students as well, and again doing great work in terms of the development, manufacture and supply of tests for COVID testing. So to highlight then the skills that you would get from a placement, I think it's really clear in terms of the industry relevant skills, but we do have a lot of opportunities in terms of our relationships with our local industries, but also there are many opportunities across the UK and Ireland across analytical processes, quality management systems, formulation development and manufacturing, and a range of R&D from biologics to vaccines, biomarker assays, sterile processes, and the list goes on. So what would a student who does a pharmaceutical biotechnology degree do afterwards? Well, I think the opportunities are just, immense. There, many students will feel that they want to continue in terms of academic research and will do further study in terms of a master's or a PhD. And this really increases the opportunities in terms of career development down the line, in terms of being project leads within industry and being on to be within senior management. There's also industrial R&D. So some students will opt to go straight into industry and will find their niche within whatever company that they take a position with, and will receive on-the-job training to further develop their skills and expertise. And some students will want to do this degree to give them a core understanding of the science underpinning many of the advances in business, but then will use that knowledge and that expertise to go on and actually maybe focus on the business side of things in terms of business development. And as I've mentioned, many of the biotechnology companies are actually quite small to medium-sized companies, and there's great opportunity for business development within that sector. So an important question then is our entrance requirements. Well, clearly, as a pharmaceutical biotechnology degree, our preference would be that students would come in with biology and chemistry at A level, with a third STEM subject, or it can be any other subject. And if you only have biology or chemistry, then your second subject would ideally be, or have to be actually, another STEM-based subject. But really making sure then that the chemistry and biology is grounded at GCSE level. Now, there's a whole range of different entrance options dependent on your background, where you've studied, and really the best thing to do is to check out our website. The courses link is down at the bottom there in red, and that will give you the most up-to-date information on the entrance requirements for any degree across the university. So really, just to finish off, why come to Queen's and why study in the School of Pharmacy? Well, I hope you understand from the presentation that we have a very high quality of teaching, 95% satisfaction rate within the National Student Survey. Our retention rate is excellent, and our employability for our students is 99%. So this means that when students leave the School of Pharmacy, they have 99% of those students will walk into their first job. We've been ranked as a leading School of Pharmacy, both nationally and internationally, and we have an outstanding reputation across the world, both for our research, our education, and for our world-class facilities. Okay, well, first of all, I am delighted that you were able to join me today to hear more about the BSc in Pharmaceutical Biotechnology. Please remember to contact the school or the Ask MHLS at qub.ac.uk if you have any other questions. And just thank you once again for joining us, and hope you have a great day. Okay, thank you.